From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Israeli airstrikes on Rafah kill at least 20, including women and children. Israeli jets also bombed 2 houses in northern Gaza, killing and wounding several people. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken calls for tighter military integration among Arab states in response to Iran. U.S. to hold talks with 6 Arab nations for air and missile defense systems. Chinese President Xi Jinping to meet French President Emmanuel Macron next week in Paris. Wars in Ukraine and the Middle East to be on the agenda. At least 42 people die after a dam burst in Kenya's northern region due to torrential rainfall. Authorities say hundreds are still missing as rescuers dig through debris. And a scorching heat wave forces the Philippines to shut down schools in Manila for the next 2 days as temperatures exceed 42 degrees Celsius. We begin in the United States with the race for the White House. President Joe Biden has confirmed that he would participate in a debate against the Republican Party's presumptive presidential nominee, Donald Trump. President Biden said that he would be happy to debate Donald Trump without mentioning when and where the verbal face-off would actually take place. The remarks came after Donald Trump repeatedly challenged President Biden to a debate last week.
I just want to say that I've invited Biden to debate. He can do it anytime he wants, including tonight. I'm ready. Here we are. I invited him to the courthouse that he has us tied up in with his administration. But we're willing to do it Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, or Friday night on national television. We're ready. Just tell me where. We'll do it at the White House. That would be very comfortable, actually. But you tell me where. But we're ready. He's obviously not showing up now. We heard nothing. But he said today that, I'd love to debate, but he won't debate. I don't think he'll debate. Maybe he will. Maybe he will. I'm not sure he has a choice.
Now, Donald Trump refused to debate his Republican rivals during the GOP primaries while only going after President Biden. And until now, President Biden had not committed to debating Donald Trump, saying that it would depend on former President Trump's behavior. The Biden campaign has been concerned that Donald Trump would not abide by rules set by the debate commission. In fact, during the 2020 presidential race, Donald Trump's microphone had to be silenced for frequent interruptions and mudslinging. Now, as President Biden and Donald Trump prepare for a face-off, the Democratic presidential candidate is preparing to take Donald Trump head on. In fact, over the weekend, President Biden revealed some new stingers from his bag of tricks, taking jabs at Donald Trump during the annual White House Correspondents Association dinner.
I want to thank you for the warm welcome, but please, not so loud. Donald was listening. Sleepy Don. I kind of like that. I may use that again. Of course, the 2024 election is in full swing. And yes, age is an issue. I'm a grown man running against a 6-year-old. I had a great stretch since the State of the Union, but Donald has had a few tough days lately. You might call it stormy weather. What the hell?
Now, several media organizations have urged President Biden and Donald Trump to commit to a debate with an official date and time. The Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates has acknowledged that televised debates could take place in September. Now, it remains unclear if the American electorate is actually clamoring for a debate between the two political rivals. But what is certain is that media outlets and Donald Trump himself are prioritizing a one-on-one face-off. And now that Biden is on board, it seems everyone can finally get what they want. Everyone, that is, except the voters themselves. And shifting to the Middle East, Hamas has reportedly fired over 20 rockets into Israel from Lebanon. Israel says that most of the rockets were intercepted, with the remaining falling in open areas. The recent flare-up has nations worried as the international community is urging an immediate ceasefire. At least 18 countries have called for a return of the Israeli hostages and have voiced their concerns of an Israeli operation in Rafah, which serves as the last bastion for almost 1.5 million Palestinians. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over the phone on Sunday, and the president reiterated his stance on America's support for the release of Israeli hostages that are still being held by Hamas. However, President Biden also told Prime Minister Netanyahu that Washington would not support Israel's military operation in Rafah. After the brief phone call, the White House confirmed that Israel has in fact taken American concerns into consideration.
That's going to be right at the top of the list for Secretary Blinken, to keep pushing for this temporary ceasefire. We want it to last for about 6 weeks. It would allow for all those hostages to get out, and of course to allow for easier aid access to places in Gaza, particularly up in the north. So he's going to be working on that very, very hard. He'll also be talking to the Israelis about their intentions and their thinking about Rafah military operations and sort of where they are in the planning stages for that.
Now, Israel says that it would go ahead with its plans to invade Rafah if Hamas fails to release hostages.
The release of the hostages is the top priority for us. The female and male hostages. If there is a deal, we will do a deal. If there will be a deal, we will halt the operation. We will do whatever is required to bring the hostages back.
Meanwhile, Egypt is hosting truce talks in Cairo, with the United States and Qatar serving as moderators. Hamas officials have confirmed their attendance and have even said that they have no major issues with the latest ceasefire plan that's been proposed. Israeli officials have also been invited to Cairo, and if they choose to attend, this could be the first parallel talks between Israel and Hamas since October 7th. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Saudi Arabia to discuss the post-war governance of Gaza.
Most effective way to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, to alleviate the suffering of children, women, and men, and to create space for a more just and durable solution, is to get the ceasefire and the hostages home. We need to improve deconfliction with the humanitarian assistance workers. And we have to find greater efficiency and greater safety, and deconfliction is at the heart of that. Is that there really are two paths forward for the region as a whole. One, ridden with division, with destruction, with violence, with permanent insecurity. The other, greater integration, greater security, greater peace. I think the meeting today shows that many more of us want to pursue that affirmative path. And I'm grateful to our colleagues from the BCC for working in partnership to advance in that direction.
Now, despite launching rockets into Israel, Hamas has signaled that they have no problems with the Cairo peace plan. And the ball is now in Prime Minister Netanyahu's court. Will Israel go ahead with its plans in Rafah, or will it agree to a ceasefire? And moving to the Caribbean nation of Haiti, the country has been grappling with relentless gang violence since January. But now Haitians say they have had enough. They are demanding food, jobs, and security. And while some have faith in the Transitional Council that took charge last week, many want it replaced with a new leader. The transition government is set to vote for a new president on Tuesday. Will the Caribbean nation finally witness stability or succumb to gang rule? Our latest report explores.
The Caribbean nation of Haiti has been on the edge for months now. There has been relentless violence in the streets and unrest in the corridors of power. But the people of Haiti want an end to this, and they want it now. Last week, a transitional council was set in place to restore order and end the turmoil. With fears of the country spiraling back into uncertainty, the citizens have put forth a list of demands. They want food, jobs, and security. And they want the Transitional Council to deliver it, come what may.
We don't have enough to send the children to school. Prices may vary very quickly. They're out of control, and hunger is only growing.
More than 2,500 people have been killed or injured from January to March alone, while over 90,000 citizens have fled Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. Criminal gangs are in control of almost 80% of the capital city.
I have lived here since some time ago. After January 12, people couldn't stay in their homes because there were aftershocks. No one wanted to stay in the damaged houses. House rents have been very high and the cost of living has increased. We are settling here, waiting to find a way to get back to normal.
Now the 9-member council faces the challenge of bringing stability to Haiti. It has taken charge after Prime Minister Ariel Henry's resignation and will now vote to elect a new leader. Till then, Henry's finance minister will be the interim prime minister.
Haiti, our country is at a crossroad. In the search for solutions to overcome the multidimensional political crisis, the consequences of which are detrimental to the population, to property, and both public and private infrastructures.
While many Haitians hope that the council would fight the gangs and win back security, some are doubtful. They believe the installation of the council is quote-unquote invalid. Some have even refused to recognize the council members as the current leaders. Instead, they want Guy Philippe, a convicted drug smuggler, to be the next president of Haiti.
The installation of this council this morning is invalid because we don't recognize those people. We do recognize Guy Philippe as the leader of this country. He is the one we will try to put in power to lead the country. Guy Philippe is the one to be president of this country. The people of this council are going to have it very badly.
Last year, Philippe returned to Haiti after serving a 6-year prison sentence in the United States. And he's not new to Haiti's politics. In 2004, he launched a coup and took control of 90% of Haiti's armed forces. 2 years later, he ran for president but failed to secure enough votes. Now he wants to try and make his lifelong dream come true again. The transitional government's mandate will run until February 2026. So will Haiti fall into mafia rule or walk towards stability? This could be determined on Tuesday as the Transitional Council gets set to vote for the next president.
And moving to Africa, where China continues to grow its influence, Beijing is reportedly buying political support in exchange for major investments in African countries. And the latest example is that from the East African nation of Djibouti, where a British member of parliament was allegedly deported on allegations of criticizing China. British MP Tim Loughton, who belongs to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party, says he was deported during a trip to the country due to its close ties to China. Now, Loughton also claims that he was detained for more than 7 hours at the airport and was sent back on the next available flight. He added, and I quote, "This was another example of how the tentacles of the Chinese Communist government extend far and wide, and their malign influence in sensitive parts of Africa is particularly worrying," end quote. Now, the Chinese embassy has called the allegations purely baseless, saying in its attempt to poison China and UK relations. In 2021, Beijing had imposed sanctions on 7 British parliamentarians, including Loughton. This was after they criticized China's human rights abuses against Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region, Tibetans, and those from Hong Kong. Now, China said the allegations were pure lies and disinformation. And now the East African nation of Djibouti shares close ties with China. In fact, the country has received billions of dollars of investments from Beijing, including a new stadium, a hospital, and a $1 billion spaceport. The Chinese government has also built a naval base in Djibouti where it has stationed 2,000 troops. As of now, the Asian giant reportedly holds more than $1.4 billion of Djibouti's debt, which is actually 45% of its GDP. And not just Djibouti, but the whole continent of Africa has for years played an important role for China as a reliable supplier of natural resources. China's cooperation with countries in Africa dates back to the World War II. And Beijing has positioned itself as a spokesperson for developing and underdeveloped countries in Africa, which today are part of the global South. China also continues to grow its interest and influence in Africa through the Belt and Road Initiative and the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. And now that growing interest appears to be centered on expelling voices critical of Beijing. And staying in Africa, the continent is facing extreme and devastating impacts of climate change. While East Africa is battling to contain deadly flash floods, the Sahel region is struggling with sweltering heat. The West African nation of Mali is witnessing temperatures as high as 48 degrees Celsius, and its people are struggling to keep cool during this punishing heat wave. As temperatures soar, ice has become a hot commodity in Mali. In fact, it's now more expensive than even bread and milk. Our next report explores how the nation is grappling with soaring temperatures.
The continent of Africa is reeling under dire effects of human-induced climate change. While East Africa is struggling to contain deadly flash floods, the Sahel region has been gripped by a lethal heat wave. In Mali, there's no respite from the scorching heat which has descended on the region. Earlier this month, Mali registered the hottest day in its history. This was after temperatures soared to 48.5 degrees Celsius in the southwestern city of Kayes. And in the capital of Bamako, a government hospital recorded 102 heat-related deaths in just the first 4 days of April.
Today, the provisional weather forecast predicts 41 degrees during the day, so this interval will last for a week. Let's be careful not to go out in the heat, and we must protect ourselves against the heat.
But as temperatures continue to soar, ice has become the hot commodity in Mali. Here's how. Mali has been suffering from an electricity crisis that began last year. Now, prolonged power cuts during a heat wave have further aggravated the problems.
When you look at the temperature, we are at 32 or 35 degrees. By 2 p.m., it will be 40 degrees. It's unbearable. It's so hot right now. And there's no electricity either. This morning, the power went out.
With no refrigerators and other appliances, people in Mali are turning to thick ice bricks to preserve their food and to keep themselves cool. But with some areas receiving less than 6 hours of electricity, ice sellers themselves are at the risk of losing their businesses.
The biggest difficulty for us is the lack of electricity, but we've been able to get by with solar panels and a generator.
The crisis has in turn pushed the price of ice higher. The cost of ice has spiked to 10 times its normal price. So much so that it is now more expensive than daily essentials like bread and milk. In some places, a small bag of ice can cost almost $1, whereas a standard loaf of bread costs 40 cents. And it's not just Mali. Neighboring countries like Senegal, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Niger and Chad are also suffering due to extreme temperatures. And the ongoing heat wave in the Sahel has hit the highly vulnerable population the worst. Dehydration and heat stroke have almost become an epidemic. Some people are facing a higher risk of respiratory disease. This has also been aggravated due to power cuts, leaving most people without fans and air conditioners. Although the Sahel is accustomed to bouts of heat during this time of year, studies say that human-induced climate change has exacerbated the situation. According to the World Weather Attribution, the region would have been 1.4 degrees Celsius cooler if humans hadn't warmed the planet by burning fossil fuels.
Really, without human-induced global warming, these temperatures wouldn't have been possible. So in a pre-industrial climate, we wouldn't expect to see heat waves of this intensity at all.
Experts are warning of a great danger. They say heat waves like this could be 10 times more frequent and severe in the coming years. Human activities are causing irreversible damage and leading to drastic consequences for life on Earth. The alarm bells for a global emergency are already ringing. It's high time we hear it and act now.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America.